Donald Trump tried to sue Jasmine in what many observers initially thought was going to be a routine legal maneuver from a man famous for wielding lawsuits like weapons against anyone who dared challenge him. But what happened next became one of the most talked about live television moments in modern memory, because just 43 seconds after his lawyers filed the aggressive complaint and the news started to ripple across media outlets, Jasmine, a young investigative journalist who had been steadily gaining a reputation for her fearless reporting, stood before the cameras with a confidence that surprised even her staunchest supporters and began unraveling a story that nobody expected, a story that linked Trump's personal life with his daughter Tiffany in ways that immediately sent shockwaves through the audience, the newsroom, and the millions of viewers glued to their screens. She did not shout, she did not dramatize with exaggerated gestures, she simply looked into the lens with a steady gaze and said that for too long, the world had been fed curated images of Trump as the calculating businessman, the powerful political figure, the manipulator of media, but beneath that surface was a truth that Tiffany herself had struggled with for years, a truth Trump had tried to keep buried through money, threats, and carefully managed public appearances, and Jasmine declared that she was tired of silence, tired of fear, tired of intimidation tactics used against critics and insiders alike, and so she would expose what she knew regardless of consequences. The silence in the studio was electric, the anchors frozen, producers waving wildly behind the glass trying to decide whether to cut the feed. But the director, sensing history in the making, let Jasmine speak, and in that uninterrupted flow she detailed how Trump's relationship with Tiffany had long been strained, how hidden financial documents proved he deliberately sidelined her in ways contradicting his public narrative of being a supportive father, how private testimonies from former staffers described shouting matches in gold-plated hallways, and how Tiffany, despite her polished public image, confided to close friends that she felt like a pawn in her father's endless quest for power and legacy. Jasmine revealed she had received encrypted files from a whistleblower inside Trump's legal team containing receipts, emails, and draft documents showing strategies not to protect Tiffany but to silence her, to prevent her from asserting claims over business assets, essentially erasing her influence in the empire that bore Trump's name. And as these words spilled out, the audience online exploded. Hashtags like #TrumpTiffanyTruth and #JasmineExposes Trump trended globally, millions tweeting, commenting, recording reactions on TikTok and YouTube, while Trump's camp scrambled to issue counterstatements. But Jasmine wasn't done. She moved from financial to emotional secrets, describing how Tiffany was excluded from family gatherings, how major decisions about her life were made without her, how even during campaigns when she wanted to speak freely she was forced to deliver scripted lines that lacked authenticity, all so that the narrative remained about her father rather than her. And Jasmine's revelations resonated deeply, especially with young women who saw in Tiffany their own struggles to be heard in families that prioritized control over compassion. Anchors asked if Jasmine was alleging abuse, manipulation, or neglect, but Jasmine said the truth was more complex. It was a pattern of silencing, a culture of fear, and an empire built on controlling narratives, even inside the family, and her decision to speak live was because Trump's lawsuit was a desperate act to stop her, a sign she had come too close. And she wanted the world to see that intimidation would not win, that light always pierces darkness, that Tiffany's story deserved to be heard. As she spoke, legal experts speculated what the lawsuit could even claim: defamation, breach of confidentiality, violation of NDAs. But Jasmine's avalanche of facts, timelines, corroborated sources, and emotional truths made the lawsuit appear weak, a smokescreen rather than a real case. And commentators compared this moment to Watergate hearings and explosive celebrity interviews, noting rarely had one journalist flipped the script on someone as powerful as Trump in such a short span, 43 seconds from lawsuit to revelation, rewriting political and cultural discourse. In hours that followed, Trump's reps scrambled to deny everything, calling Jasmine a fraud, accusing her of fabricating, threatening further action. But the digital tide had turned, millions dissecting clips, analyzing her tone, cross-referencing her hints about dates, locations, and documents, and even those who once dismissed Tiffany as peripheral began wondering what she might say if free to speak, because thanks to Jasmine the silence was broken, the wall of secrecy cracked, and no lawsuit could unring the bell of truth struck live before an audience that would not forget. And as cameras cut away, anchors barely able to summarize, the world realized it had witnessed the collision of power, truth, and courage that would be studied and remembered. The following days brought chaos, Trump's legal team filing urgent motions, trying to censor Jasmine's claims, lobbying networks to retract broadcasts, threatening defamation suits against anyone repeating her words. But none of it stemmed the tide, because independent journalists and even international outlets began digging, confirming fragments of what Jasmine had said, unearthing overlooked documents, interviewing former employees who validated parts of her story, and soon the narrative shifted from whether Jasmine told the truth to how deep Trump's attempts to silence Tiffany really went, with questions emerging about inheritance, trust funds, and control of assets. Meanwhile, Jasmine became an overnight global figure. Her face splashed across newspapers, interviews requested by major outlets, supporters rallying online, and critics digging into her past to discredit her. Yet her credibility held because every passing day revealed more evidence backing her claims. Protests erupted outside courthouses demanding transparency, students held rallies chanting Tiffany's name, women's rights organizations issued statements calling Jasmine's courage a turning point, and political rivals seized the moment to attack Trump's character, portraying him as not just corrupt but a father willing to sacrifice his daughter for power. Inside the Trump family, reports leaked of furious arguments, of Melania retreating from public eye, of Ivanka struggling to manage the fallout, of Eric and Don Jr. launching social media tirades to defend their father, but Tiffany herself remained silent, her social feeds inactive, her silence fueling speculation whether she was negotiating with lawyers, drafting her own statement, or simply overwhelmed by the tidal wave of attention. Late-night comedians turned the scandal into monologues, memes flooded the internet, satirical sketches reenacted Jasmine's 43-second turnaround, but beneath the humor was real unease. What did this say about power, family, and truth in American politics? Jasmine herself received death threats, security had to be assigned, yet she refused to retreat, appearing on global platforms, reiterating her commitment to truth, stating she would not be bullied into silence. Legal scholars debated whether Trump's lawsuit could survive given the public interest defense, while political analysts warned the revelations might erode Trump's base, especially among suburban women and younger voters. International leaders weighed in cautiously, some praising Jasmine's bravery as a model for press freedom, others avoiding comment to sidestep diplomatic tension. But globally the story dominated headlines, overshadowing policy debates, eclipsing economic news, reshaping conversations about leadership and morality. Eventually Tiffany broke her silence with a carefully worded statement, not directly confirming all of Jasmine's claims but thanking those who supported her, speaking vaguely of personal struggles, and urging respect for privacy. Yet her words were read between the lines as quiet validation, fueling further waves of analysis. Trump, cornered, doubled down, lashing out in rallies, dismissing Jasmine as a liar, painting Tiffany as manipulated, vowing to crush the fake news, but each outburst only amplified the narrative Jasmine set in motion. And so, from that single lawsuit filed with the intent to intimidate, Trump had triggered the very storm he feared, giving Jasmine the platform to unleash truths that rewrote public perception, reshaped his legacy, and carved her name into the annals of fearless journalism. And though the legal battles dragged on in courts, though spin machines churned endlessly, though Trump's supporters tried to drown out the scandal with distractions, the world had already witnessed that 43-second reversal, that moment when power collided with truth, and history, once again, was changed not by those who sought to silence but by those brave enough to speak.
Thank you for watching.